Alright everyone, it's time to talk about independent content creators and sort of some general advice on how we can survive the censorship dark age that we're currently in. It's funny because basically it's making suggestions that we make it a reality what people like Becca Lewis think happens. Like they think like, well, you're like alt-right adjacent or platforming hate or something. And one of the main suggestions that I'll make it involves actually platforming creation. The first one though is shouting one another out. If you have a largish channel, we're talking, a few tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube. If you have a Facebook page, you're on alt tech certainly or whatever, and you make others aware of the existence of a channel or a page or something, another individual in their various presences, it helps to buoy them up. If all of the sort of maligned side of weird side slash edgy politics slash edgy commentary, if that's whole side of YouTube, if we were to just shout each other out in a general sense, like make literally nothing more than shout out videos, all of us would skyrocket to astronomical totals just on YouTube, let alone all of the other platforms that we're on. The reason why is because right now there's overlap certainly between our audiences on various platforms, but it's not complete overlap. And you don't have any, you don't have to endorse someone. You can say, look, I like this person, I subscribe to them, here's their Twitter and stuff, I don't agree with their views, like with Colette from yesterday. I don't agree with all of Mark Collette's views, but I like his content anyway. And because I don't want him censored, yeah, I want him to see his channel grow to massive levels, because it makes it more difficult to be censored when you are reaching a larger audience. The more people that are aware of your existence, the harder it is ultimately to justify deplatforming you, because it becomes a freak show. And so they tend to be more choosy, these Silicon Valley sites. They tend to be a little bit more selective with who they bully around when the person has a large audience. It's easier for them to get away with deplatforming someone who's got 10 followers on the whole internet versus someone who has 10 million. It's just by design. Now, part of that is there's a part of me that says, well, all people should be protected equally on these platforms against raids and stuff, but you are going to draw more fire if you're larger. And so if people are on that precipice, I'd say maybe 5 to 10,000 upwards to 100, 150. If you're in that particular group, that's the danger zone especially, because you haven't been made so big that you necessarily, even if your audience is really engaged, if you get 100,000 people following your work, that is a lot of people. I'm not trying to be light about it, but it's not like 10 million followers. And so when you're in that sort of transitionary period between being maybe a smaller creator, again cross-platform, and being someone with quite a large audience, you can end up you're like a lightning rod for attacks, because you're notable enough so that you have people that will, there are people who park on my channel just to downvote every video I make, so to speak. But you're not at the level where you're fully protected yet. Especially on YouTube, till you're at 100K, unless you convince them that you're a significant brand that has to be considered of priority status, until you're verified, until you're an actual verified partner, you have to wait to 100K to get that. That gives you an additional layer of protection. You can actually talk to someone from Google and get your basically channel manager. There's a smaller pool of people who work specifically with the larger channels, and so you have better access to get strikes removed and stuff, but you can be definitely vulnerable if you're in that position. So getting people over those hurdles, I think, is a good thing. That's number one. Number two would be to utilize alt tech, but not just get alt tech. It's like I was thinking about this, like Soph had a Gab page, and had it for a while, but I never knew it existed because it was never advertised that she was on there really. If you have become large-ish as a creator, I recommend you not just get accounts on alt tech. Again, Gab, mine, Subscribestar is excellent. It's working just fine. Certainly BitChute, DTube, and Steemit to an extent, and just DLive and some of these others. Don't just make accounts there. Tell people on all the other platforms that you exist there. Like in every one of my videos, there are links to every one of my accounts, with the exception of YouTube, and apparently I should change that so that there's some flow into the YouTube channel on other platforms, which is hilarious to me that at this point might be a necessity. If you do that, if you make sure people know that you're on these platforms, like, hey guys, links in the description, I'm on BitChute, Gab, Minds, blah, 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 that's a good thing. And that also helps. It was like, and I thought of this the other day when I was talking about Colette. That I didn't know he does, I believe, have a Gab and stuff, but I didn't know that he had it. He has a Minds account. I think I followed him yesterday, or was it Gab? It was one or the other that I followed him on. I think it was Minds. But he has an account, but I never knew it existed because it's not linked anywhere. He doesn't, unless I'm keeping up with all of his content and I hear him talking about things, I have no idea it's there. The same is true for anyone else. If you make an account and you tell people, on video, like let's say you're a big time YouTuber, that's your main presence. Like you'd be more like me like a year ago. And you make a Gab account, you make a video about it, and you're like, hey, I'm on Gab too, and you start doing your Gabby thing. People will go to the Gab account and join you potentially. But your audience is growing, and so if you don't occasionally remind people that you're there, you've only got a part of your core audience actually on that platform. And so it's not as protective as it could otherwise be. Diversifying, branching out onto multiple platforms is a great way to protect yourself. Gab is not going to ban you unless you're doing crazy shit. Minds is not going to ban you. You're not going to get kicked off of BitChute for saying the F word, so to speak. And so you've got to try to branch out. Number 3 is perhaps the most important after, fashion, and that would be to platform those that have been abused. Someone's been, kicked off of a site, you talk about it, but also invite them on, let them tell their side of the story. Because one tactic we've seen from the censorship lovers, I'd say their main tactic, is that they try to attack all of the accounts at once as quickly as possible in hopes of limiting that person's ability to fight back, just to defend themselves verbally. Like, you'd say, like what they did to InfoWars. Basically, they were kicked off of most of the visible internet in a 48-hour period. It then became difficult for, Alex Jones to justify his positions and say, look, you got it wrong, number 1. Number 2, isn't this obviously coordinated? Number 3, by the way, haha, I was right, it is a conspiracy, which sort of feeds into his line, what they did to him. And so now, instead, he goes on Rogan and stuff like that. It's not like InfoWars went anywhere. He comes out and makes major appearances. I think it was number 1 trending on YouTube when he was talking with Rogan. And it was normal Alex Jones behavior time as well, and so it was hilarious. And a lot of people, I'm sure, went to InfoWars and bought merchandise and signed up and watched the podcast and all of that stuff now because of that appearance. It's protective. And a lot of people won't do this. They're worried like, oh my god, but this person's been banned, so maybe if I have him on my show, I'll get banned or something. Well, yeah, you might be targeted, but if you're thinking that way, if you're under the option of platforming someone who's been deplatformed, you're already probably on a naughty list somewhere. I know I am. My username is on some list somewhere of people to keep an eye on, and basically if I make a misstep, get me off the platform as quickly as possible. I'm well aware of this fact. I'm well aware of the fact that a bunch of corporate billionaires don't like people like me because we're reducing their bottom line, their profit margin. That's basically what it boils down to. It's all about the fucking money. A lot of people don't understand that. They think it's about politics. It's not about politics. The right wing simply happened to rise up online at a time when the corporations were starting to decline in the communications era, in the infotainment age. Old style, fucking even older wave on demand can't compete. And it happened to be that the paradigm is, simply as it is, that neoliberals were the ones in charge, therefore the countercultural icons that became more popular tended to be conservatives, libertarians, and alt-right, and things like that, as opposed to being liberals. There are plenty of far-left individuals, there are plenty of progressive so-called and communists on the platform that have big audiences. Like a greasy, fat Mohawk dude there, and, people like that, and short, man-lip, who talks about incest all the time for some reason. Yeah, there are commies on YouTube that have made it big. And that's just on YouTube. Look, you go to Reddit or Tumblr, it's basically, nothing but leftists anyway. Although Reddit, of course, a little bit different. And Tumblr, I'm surprised it still exists, to tell the truth. They kicked porn off. Why else does anyone use Tumblr? It's the only reason was people posting pictures of themselves and others in compromising situations, or talking about how they had a blood fetish or something like that. But that's 3 ways. And also I would, an addendum, number 4, just briefly, modulate yourself. Don't give them any ammunition against you. And also, as a caveat, how that connects with number 3. If you are being platformed by another person, maybe consider toning it down so as not to endanger that individual, especially if it's a live appearance. If it's pre-recorded, of course, you can edit things out and stuff like that, and it's not a problem. But don't draw fire that you don't have to. There's no reason to bother doing so. It's great to be edgy and to piss people off and piss in the lamestream. But if you can do that, and continue to operate on the larger platforms unabused, there's no reason to specifically invite that abuse. It's just not necessary. That's about all. Peace out.